whenever we see those things that say results not typical on before and afters, that's really not this. I want you to see that this can be true for you too. Last year, I did a video titled Level Up, Run Faster in Your Next Marathon. And in that video, I gave specific points for you to follow in order to really have that breakthrough performance in your next marathon. And so for many athletes, this Level Up marathon is the second marathon. And that's really because in the first marathon, it's a lot of times more about finishing. And the truth is, what you don't know, you don't know. And a lot of that experience in the first marathon really changes things for the next one, or just understanding how to train or having an opportunity to look back and figure out what went wrong. So this is actually one of my favorite training cycles to coach an athlete through when they're going for that Level Up marathon. And that's because on my end, I see so much opportunity. It's really easy for me to look at an athlete's previous training, how they went about executing the marathon, and really seeing where those opportunities lie so that we know what we need to do for the next one. And the reality is if the athlete is willing to make those commitments and adjustments needed, then they're really going to be set up for success when we get to race day. And then at that point, it's about trusting the plan that we have for race day and going out and executing it. So if you want that specific list of how to level up your next marathon, check out that next video for sure. I will link it right after this one so that you don't miss it. But in this video, I'm highlighting 5 athletes who had those performances that I'm talking about. I coached all of them one-to-one this year, and they really followed everything on that list to finally get the level up in their marathon that they were seeking. So the first athlete that I'm going to talk about is Allison M. And her first marathon was the Twin Cities Marathon in 2022. And we actually had a 1-hour coaching session before that marathon. So she completely trained herself on her own. This was just a race strategy call. And she went on to run that first marathon. And then we started working together not long after that. She actually took that year off from the marathon. So this is actually a really good point to kind of listen in on, playing that long game. But she decided that this year, so 2024, was her year to go back to the marathon distance and level it up. And she's in such an amazing place right now. So I just want to share her statistics from that first marathon to that second marathon that was also at Twin Cities. So here's Allison, and you can see that she finished in about 5:10 that first marathon. She went from 11:36 per mile at the halfway point to 11:50. So that red arrow showing that she positive split or went slower in the second half. What the data shows, slower than 75% of women, she positive split the race. But the main goal of finishing was achieved, which is what that first marathon is all about. Fast forward to Twin Cities 2024, she ran a 4:27, got a 42-minute PR. And it's good to notice her split pace at halfway, 10:18 per mile, overall finish pace of 10:13 per mile. This means that she negative split the race, went faster in that second half, which is the goal that we are seeking, at a minimum to have that even split, but at least a little bit of a negative split. In the marathon, she ended up being faster than 53% of the women, and just really, really consistent pacing. So it wasn't like her back half was way faster than her first. So she was pretty consistent on bringing that down. One important thing I want to note about Allison before we move on to the next athlete is she is a CrossFit coach, and she's a CrossFit athlete herself. She's actually balancing 2 loves in terms of running and CrossFit. And so it's just really nice to be able to have this example that it doesn't have to be all or nothing in terms of running. She's doing strength training at a very high level while she's also running. And it's really exciting to see that she leveled up her marathon while doing both. The next athlete that I want to highlight is David P. And similar to Allison, we actually connected before his first marathon, doing a 1-hour consult, having that race strategy locked in, which is helpful too for these people having a better first marathon experience as well, which I can definitely say about David. So he had an amazing debut marathon, running a 3:53, which is really, really great to break 4 in your very first marathon. He's also in his 50s. And another important thing to note about David is in the couple of years prior, he went through a big transformation, losing close to 100 pounds. and he only started running in 2022. So, as part of the weight loss journey, he started walking a lot. That transitioned to running, that transitioned to racing. So, he actually only ever ran his first race, which was a 10K, then led to a half marathon in 2022, which led to him wanting to run this first marathon in 2023. And we started working together shortly after one on one as he trained for his second marathon, which was his Level Up Marathon. So, as I said, great performance from the get go from David. He had a really good marathon time, but you can see once again that positive split. So, it split at halfway, 8:28 per mile, with an overall finish pace of 8:55. So, he slowed down just over 25 seconds per mile on average, which means that the second half was significantly slower than the first half. And then leading to the next marathon where we worked together, he was going for a Boston qualifying time, which he succeeded in doing. He ran a 3:32:46. You'll see that negative split again. So you're going to notice a pattern: 8:13 per mile halfway, 8:07 overall. So not a huge difference, meaning that he did a really good job of consistent pacing, just like Allison. And to get that negative split, which is the best way to run a marathon. Top 16% of his age group, so not that much different than percentage from the first one. But the thing to know about Mesa is it is generally a very fast field. It's also a bigger marathon. But yeah, he's performing very well in his age group. And big thing, 28 plus minute PR, and he qualified for Boston. So great job, David. Just all around, so impressed by his journey over the last few years. And I think he's such a great example of when you put your mind to it, you can achieve way more than you think that you can. So the next person that I'm highlighting is Nina N. And she's actually run 3 marathons, all New York City. And she ran the first one in 2022 with very little training. So this was way before I met her. And in that one, she ran a 5:46. So it wasn't until much later, July of 2023, that we started working together. So we had just under 4 months before she ran New York City again. So it wouldn't have been my ideal. I would have wanted to work with her sooner, knowing that she was coming in with not much mileage, not a lot, not super consistent prior to that, but better than she'd been doing before. So we didn't have a ton of time, but even then, she still took a ton of time off her marathon. And then we continued to work together the entire next year. So she ended up running 2024 New York City, where I was as well, and got to meet her in person, which was super exciting. And that time she definitely leveled up, and overall just shared with me was one of her best days ever, which as a running coach, like, it's so great to hear that kind of testimony. And that's what it's all about. It's supposed to be fun. And that's what managing the marathon well can feel like, so that you're not slogging to the end. And that's really what I wish for everyone, is to have that amazing experience. And if you get the PR, then that's just icing on the cake. So let's go ahead and look at the details for her there. So you can see that she went from a 5:03:35 to a 4:14:44. So 49-minute personal record. And that's coming off the one the year prior that was 43 minutes. So that's a ton of progress that she made in the marathon in 2 years' time. So just looking at the stats a little bit closer between the two, you can see that she positive split that one in 2023 by quite a bit. So meaning that she ran quite a bit slower in the second half for that one in 2023. And if you look to the one to 2024, she didn't negative split the marathon, but it's very close. So hence the blue arrow really signifies more of a even split, or very close to an even split. So she ran 9:38 per mile in the first half with an overall pace of 9:43 per mile. So even though she ran the second half a little bit slower, it wasn't a lot. And honestly, it's really hard to negative split the marathon. So in my eyes, she did an amazing job. And just to see the stats in terms of her age group, for that one in 2023, she was slower than 56% of her age group. And then in the one in 2024 this year, faster than 76% of her age group. So really awesome results. So fun to be able to meet Nina in person and just hear how amazing her experience this was this year. And we're continuing to work together, and she has big goals for this year coming up as well. Moving on to our next runner, Ted. So I love Ted's story, and we started working together long before his, I'll call, comeback marathon. So the thing that's important to know about Ted is before he ran a marathon with me, he hadn't run one in over 43 years. So, and he was 63 when he ran that one with me. So you can see he was very, very young. So by then we're not even using those times anymore. But something else that's really important is on his own, he had really been trying to get back to the marathon distance for about the 10 years prior. So took kind of a long hiatus from that distance running, but really started running more consistently in those 10 years before we started working together. And he did try to run 2 marathons. So he had 2 marathon training cycles and he got hurt in both of them. He just kept suffering calf injuries and it was not allowing him to get to the start line. So that comeback marathon, we were working together for that one, but it was really more seen as a first marathon. So definitely not a level up marathon. It was really more about him getting to the start line healthy and finishing, which he succeeded in. So important to celebrate that part because that was the biggest thing. And it was so exciting to see him do that. So we continued to work together all of this past year. He ran the same marathon in 2024. So Erie Marathon last year, Erie Marathon this year. So looking closer at those stats to compare, his finish time in 2023 was a 5:34:43. This year, getting that sub 5 at 4:58:36. So a really good PR between those two, about 36 minutes. And again, you can see how he ran a lot slower in the second half of that one in 2023. And just like Nina, he really did a great even split in the one this year, which led to his success. Something that I want to point out that's super interesting is his split pace at halfway last year was faster by 24 seconds per mile than his halfway split pace this year. So he went a lot slower in the first half this year. So that was something that we really worked on. And he really trusted that going in. And that was a huge piece of his success is being able to slow down in the first half so that he could have a really strong second half. So again, finishing was a huge win in the first one, but big things that he did the second time, just staying controlled on that first half. Second half was actually less than 2 minutes slower than the first half. So a near even split. So that's a very, very well run race that he should be incredibly proud of. And just working with Ted through this and him being 64 this year and not being able to run marathons till his 60s from previously not running them since his 20s. I know a lot of people can relate to that, or that's kind of where you're at your point in your life. And I just think he's such an inspiration for older runners that are trying to get back to it, or maybe just starting out, that it's never too late. So I hope that if that is you, that you can learn a lot from Ted and just be inspired by him. And the last one on our list is Elizabeth. So she's our most recent one. She actually just completed her marathon a few weeks ago. So she ran her first marathon at the Louisiana Marathon. I think it was in January of 2023. And then she decided not to run a marathon that fall. She wanted to focus on the half marathon. She had a big life transition in getting a new job, moving to a new state, and obviously just acclimating to that alone was very time consuming. We talk a lot about stages of life and when to prioritize things. And she knew at the time it was not a great time to be prioritizing the marathon. And then fast forward to 2024, she signed up for the Every Woman's Marathon. And that's when she reached out to me for coaching. And she just knew that she was ready to make a commitment. And she did not have a fun experience at all in that first one. It was really a slog at the end, which I know a lot of you can relate to having that experience as well. And she didn't want to have that again. She wanted a PR, but I think really more than anything, she just wanted to have a great experience and see how to execute the marathon well. So when I say we started from scratch, I truly mean it. She hadn't really been running at all or hardly at all for a few months prior to when we started working together. So we started working together in April So that left about 7 months, 7.5 months for us to work together before she ran her marathon. And this is what I love when athletes reach out well in advance. I talked a little bit before about how when I first started working with Nina, we only had 4 months or less. And that's a training cycle, but if you haven't been running much before that, it's really hard to get the result that you want or see that potential that we're looking for. So it's just so nice to be able to have all of that time with Elizabeth, carefully build up, make sure that she stayed injury free, she wasn't getting burnt out. And it just set her up for a huge day at Every Women's Marathon. So let's go ahead and look at how she leveled up between her first marathon and her second marathon. So in her first one, she ran a 5:16:59, split it halfway was 11:17 per mile. Second half was much slower, finishing at a 13:36 per mile. It was not fun at all, not at the experience that she was looking for. So I just love that she was willing to come back to the marathon because I know sometimes that scares people away. Slower than 74% of women. And we also have to remember, like I said before, main goal of finishing was achieved, which is and should be that main goal in the first one. So we worked so much on consistency and just staying focused and intentional in the running. She got a 48-minute personal record, finishing at 4:28:52, and her big goal was to finish under 4:30. That was like our major stretch goal, and she did it. It was so fun to watch her. I mean, her splits were absolutely insane. She ran the second half so much faster than the first half. In fact, she also PR'd her half marathon by 13 minutes during her marathon. And you can see from the splits, so 10:47 per mile at split pace at halfway, overall finish of 10:15 per mile. But then that also means that's not just the second half. So showing you the second half and how much faster she went. And, looking back now, would I have started her a little bit faster knowing that? Yes, probably. But she really achieved her goal of just having so much fun, having a great experience, going after a huge, scary goal and getting it. And she's in such a good position to have another breakthrough race on this next one. So wrapping up, I'm so proud of what these athletes accomplished. But I think what is important for you to know is whenever we see those things that say results not typical on before and afters, that's really not this. I want you to see that this can be true for you too. I've worked with a lot of athletes who've had very similar performances to these 5 athletes here. And so coaching really can help with that. It just streamlines that point A to point B, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it on your own. I've definitely known athletes who've done it on their own too. It's just really about finding that right plan, being super intentional, trusting your training, trusting the process going into the race day, into the plan, being okay with letting your ego go and starting slower. But it's really all about fully committing to the training, investing in yourself and knowing that you're worthy of going after high goals. And once you do that, then you can see that you can start having that breakthrough that you are absolutely capable of. So if you're ready to level up your marathon in 2025, working with a coach, I will link that information below. If you are interested in seeking out more information right now or wondering more about how these athletes had these breakthrough performances, I'm going to recommend that you watch this video with the list of everything that they did that we have our athletes do. And as always, guys, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one.